Okay.
Hello, everybody. We are here to talk to you about world building. My name is Barker. My channel is BeABetterGameMaster, but the more important channel today is BrigadeCon.org for you to go donate to Child's Play charity. Quick rundown. Child's Play charity goes to children's hospitals. I believe it started with Seattle Children's Hospital, maneuvered around to others, giving kids who have terminal illnesses, who are sick, giving them games, giving them books, board games, movies, just stuff that's fun to help them out during that extremely difficult time that personally I've never had to go through. So I have no problem throwing some cash at them, and if you go to BrigadeCon.org, please do it yourself. I've got two, as Matt Click would put it, righteous bunch of dudes around me. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. We'll start with Alex, the Guillotine. CaptainGothnog. Go ahead.
I have many aliases. Yeah, so my name's Alex. I go by CaptainGothnog on YouTube, and I have and I publish RPG supplements on DriveThruRPG. Critical Publishing.
Eater of the Mind magazine.
Yes, including Theater of the Mind magazine and a bunch of other stuff.
Yes. That.
And I am, well, I was going to pretend to be Sean Connors from The Outsider 68 because that's who was supposed to be on this panel, but I have taken up his spot, and I will try to live up to his reputation as best I can. I am Matt. I run a channel called aFistfulofDice, and yeah, I'm super psyched to be here and talking about some world building with these guys. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For sure, for sure. So to keep everybody posted, if you have been subscribed to my channel, BeABetterGameMaster, for a while, you know that a while back we had a contest of who could make the coolest map. Now, how this worked, we got like 20 people sent maps in, and they're still coming just because people know the contest is over, but they're still sending maps, and they're all awesome. There's not a bad one. Like, there's one that's like the shape of a heart, and it's like a unicorn land. Like, that is going to be... Yes, it is going to be an extra plane of existence for my players that go in there. But the ultimate goal here was to grab a map and then work together as a group to create, to turn that map into a world. And that's what kind of this panel is about. But we're going to make a world, and then I'm going to take my video equipment, my audio equipment, and I'm going to get my group of players, and we're going to make a produced, professionally edited, live play game in the world that you, yes you, on the couch with your chips, and us made. Yeah, that's you, Matt. And we're going to do a live play of that. It's going to be awesome. And might I present to you the winner of the Be a Better Game Master Build a Map, Create a Map thingy contest. That is right here, Alex G, the CaptainGothnog. You can see his map. Oh, do you have an acceptance speech?
No.
Okay, I was getting ready. I was getting the orchestral music ready to kick you off the stage. You know? If you want to see that map, it's actually in the video description on YouTube of this game. So check it out, download it. Might even reference it a few times. But basically, let's get started. This is not a panel where three of us will talk at you and tell you what we think. This is a discussion. So we have the Q&A app open. We're going to be taking questions about world building, about what should go in your map, about NPCs, about storylines, plot hooks, whatever you feel. If you are having difficulty creating a world, throw them at us, and then we'll just talk about it. This is built as a roundtable discussion, partially because I think we're all awesome and have a lot of cool things to say. Also, partially because we didn't have very much time to prepare, and I kind of kept these guys on their toes and was very last minute about this. So, send in your questions as we go. The first question I have, though, is this. A map is not a world. Okay, you can have the coolest map in the world, and you will not have a world there. coolest map on the planet, I should say, just to not confuse people. And you don't have a world. You can also have a very terrible map and have an excellent world for your players to play in. So what turns this this piece of paper with drawings on it into a real world? Is it the position of the geography? Is it the storylines? What is it? And the first question here is this, and I'm gonna point this immediate question to the contest winner, to Alex G. Where do you start when it comes to creating a world? What is step one for you?
Well, I tend to prefer more realistic worlds as far as how it looks goes, at least. I know people create some worlds that are really fantastic, more fantastic in their design, but I like it to have a real feel. So I usually start with, figuring out how I want the world to be divided up. So do I want a lot of places that I can explore, expand into? Do I want a single kind of continent area that I want everything to take place in? What am I going for in that case? And and then I can just start doing the outlines. And I always try to base it on real geology, water systems, weather patterns and so forth.
Where do you find the information for that sort of stuff, the geology stuff?
Well, I'm lucky. I have kids, so we've actually bought a whole bunch of kids books about about some of these basic subjects, geology. Because you don't need to be a geologist to understand how plate tectonics work, how mountains are formed and why, and where they would form. So especially for a GM who doesn't necessarily want to get a degree in geology, you can go to these kids' books, or even, or even just Wikipedia and say type in Google how do mountains form, and you usually get some really cool images and shows the different ways they can form, and then you can start to kind of think how these are going to fit into your world. I think for me anyway, the more familiar you can make it as far as how things are structured, the more it immerses the players in the game. There's some games that have worlds that are really, really bizarre, and I have a hard time immersing myself in them because, I can't help but think it's like, but those mountains wouldn't be there, I tend to overthink those kind of things. So this is for me. But even more important though is if you do like that kind of thing, the important thing is consistency. Create the laws that you want your world to follow, and then follow them. So if mountains are formed by giants who basically push up the mountains, or gods who yank them up, just make sure that fits in with your mythology. As long as it's consistent, and there's and you have a good reason for it, there should be a reason behind it, I guess is the point.
Awesome. See, in Middle Earth kind of comes to mind as a map that is not not very geologically realistic, or geographically realistic when it comes to the mountains. And I mean, Mordor is a fence. Like, really, it's just a fence. Yeah. But that world still seems realistic to me. Like, when I watch The Lord of the Rings, when I read The Lord of the Rings, I believe that this is real. One of the issues that I have is, I throw so much stuff into my world that eventually, this is the example I use, there are wizards riding around on unicorns shooting rainbows out of their butts, and I'm like, what is the evolution behind this? Why do they shoot the rainbows out of their butts? I want to know exactly. Bad example. Maybe a good example. I don't know. You tell us, viewers. I don't have any questions in the Q&A app. Geography and geography is not necessarily the end-all be-all when it comes to realism. But what do you think is, if it's not geography? And we'll shoot to Matt. Where do you start? If I'm building a world, I tend to start with locations and people rather than making a map. But I have to say, what Alex said about making it consistent is really important, because if you're going to have stuff in your world that doesn't make
logical sense, or that doesn't follow typical, like the way mountains form, the way rivers flow. You have to make it consistent. If it can happen in one spot in the world, it should probably happen elsewhere. One time I was playing in this game, and the DM was describing there was this large city sort of up in the hills, and he described how goods were transported from the harbor to this town. And I was like, how is the river flowing back up the hills towards the mountains? And he was like, well, it just is. And it completely took me out of the game because it was something so fundamental. It's like rivers flow towards the sea. They don't flow. The sea doesn't flow in up to the mountains. It just sort of really took me out of the game. But if he had said, well, the gnomes have been able to construct these dams that reverse the flow of water using like lodestones or something, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. You know, coming up with a reason that these things are not the way they are. Like one of my favorite things to do is to put geographical features on my map and have them be like a leftover from a battle between two gods that happened like millennia ago, you know, and things like this. So, woo.
What's an example?
Oh, yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that hurt.
Ow. there was audio feedback there. I'm not sure if that was...
I get that too.
Well, I didn't hear it, so it must have been me. My bad.
Oh, no problem. So what did you say, Parker?
I was asking, what's an example of that? You said you gave the example of a battle between two gods, and that created this, I don't know, geological...
Yeah, so a good example is, let's see, well, the world that we're playing in the Provokers games... So the Forest of Shadevale.
Hold on, I need to take notes. I'm playing in this game. Hold on.
Yeah. I had this idea that the world was sort of, before the gods arrived on this world, it was populated by these things called primordials, and they're essentially like the Greek titans. They're these big elemental beings that are sort of walking around and fighting each other and basically just shaping this world. And I had the idea that this forest had sprung up from the blood of this primordial that had fallen there. That there was some battle there just millions of years ago, and this primordial had fallen and died, and this forest had sort of sprung up from its body, and so it sort of gave me this idea of, this forest makes sense. It's following the water. You know, forests tend to spring up near water. You know, and it's sort of hugging the edge of these hills and these mountains. So it makes some geographical sense. But I want it to have a sinister edge to it. I want it to be almost like a Mirkwood type thing. So I'm like, how can I make this forest be sinister and sort of have a surreal edge to it without me just saying, well, it's magic. So I had the idea of, these trees have grown from the blood of an ancient titan. An elemental being fell here and died, and a forest has sprung up from its corpse. So that kind of gives it, you know, okay, this makes geographical sense, and also within the context of the world, the way that this thing is makes sense. So
that's excellent, man. That is amazing.
Because as an example of, like you talked about Mordor, I have a section in my world that was created by the impact of a meteor, and it so kind of created this huge natural bowl with these mountains around the edge. And not only did that, but the civilization that grew up within it has access to this unique stone from the sky that neutralizes magic. So they became this kind of, you know, xenophobic anti-magic empire that has been trying to destroy, you know, all non-human races and take over the world, kind of thing. So
that's awesome.
They had this kind of natural barrier around them from this impact. I like the idea
about the map that you can download, by the way, in the video description. Like, this is when I showed this to my players, that's how we figured out the winner of this contest. I put it to a vote, and all in favor went for your map, except for one. His name is Alex, and he's watching us now. He totally wanted the heart-shaped unicorn land, but that was not voted for.
Yeah, every land speaks to someone, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and the cool thing about it, I do like putting in unusual features, though. but in the context of normality. So you might have almost everything is normal, but then you have this one land that's different somehow. Like the water does go backwards. So again, it creates a mystique about that particular land. It makes it unique. Why is it going backwards? What causes it? What sort of enchantment is here that makes that happen? So rather than just have the whole world water just flows uphill, you have this one place where it happens. So it makes that place, unique somehow.
Yeah. In the world that I'm building, that's exactly what it is. It's magic is it's pretty uncommon, except for in very specific areas. It's almost volcanic, like flowing out of the earth, this magic, and so those areas are defying gravity. They might be upside down, or a dark, dense jungle right in the middle of the desert. I mean, it's just really crazy things that don't make sense. And I think in that case, you can say, well, it was just magic. That's what it is. But you shouldn't fall back on that like it's some sort of crutch. Like, oh, why is the water going upwards? Magic. Or why can this person read minds? Science fiction. Don't look behind the barbed curtain.
I think Alex, I think you hit on just fantasy world building. That's rule number one, is make sure that the non-fantastical things make sense, so that when you run into something fantastic, it is it's okay, this world makes sense. Generally, things are as they are in our world, but then you come up on these floating islands, or you find some water that's running backwards, or like Barker, like you were saying, you come upon this volcanic sort of magma belching up through the earth that is literally just pure magic. That makes those things even weightier, and it makes your players kind of more sort of in awe of them, because they are unique. They are fantastic elements within a world that for the most part makes sense. If you have a world where everything is just topsy-turvy all the time, you're not going to be fazed by anything.
Well, the other thing about that, though, is that it's like people often make fun of science fiction writers because you're always dealing with humanoids who speak a language kind of like ours, that sort of thing. But you have to kind of balance the fantastic with things people can relate to. Like you could make a science fiction movie about two pools of goo that are super intelligent and talk to each other through scent. They both they both release scents that they talk to each other with. But it's not going to be a movie a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, speak for yourself, man. I don't know. That sounds good to me.
That would win 5 Oscars this year.
Well, you could have it as a sideline, but you wouldn't have a whole movie based on those are the main characters.
Yeah.
So it has to be at least somewhat relatable, which is why why D&D is sort of based in a Western European motif. It's not medieval Europe, which is a mistake people make, but it has the feel of it. So it's something people can relate to a little bit.
Balance, like you said, balance. The fantastic will not seem fantastic unless your players have been exposed to the boring, the real, the norm. Let's get to some questions. Some people.
Yes,
okay, so let's start with. I'm just going to start at the top. I don't know what order these come in. I think in pluses. So the first, the top one says, "What are some good ways to creatively transport characters around the world?" And I'm going to grab this and run with it really quick, because when I got bored, what's that, Alex?
Get that back here.
Yeah, I know. Bored was the wrong word. When I was really scrounging for campaign ideas, I decided, and I've been watching a lot of Doctor Who, so I decided that, hey, this magical item that they had discovered 5 sessions ago, and they were wondering, what do we do with this? What does this do? It gave it the ability to, when they willed it, it would transport them to another location where a problem needed to be solved. And I'll be honest, for a few sessions when they were doing this, it seemed a lot like railroading, but we had such a sandboxy feel to the whole campaign that it really helped to kind of narrow things down and just give them a fun few objectives. Kill this skeleton. Figure out what is haunting this mansion. Something like that, and it transported them through space and time. Let's be honest, I totally ripped off Doctor Who here, but it worked. transporting characters around the world, it doesn't just have to be horse and carriage. It doesn't have to be, ship or even airship. It could be. This is one of those other fallbacks where it's like, hey man, you're the GM. You can come up with some sort of magical thingamabob that really helps them move from place to place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea of portals was in a game I played a while back. Someone else ran, and there were these portals that had been built by an ancient race. So they were where they were and they couldn't be moved. So people just kind of built around them, so they would use them to move themselves between these gates. Yeah. But you can put limitations on it, such as maybe you can only go through naked. Something like that. You can because one of the big problems, and I see this a lot with teleport, the spell teleport in D&D, is that once you reach a certain point, and your characters can just like jump around the globe, anywhere they want, pretty much. It gets really, to me, the traveling is part of the fun. Yeah. So you got to be careful when you don't make your traveling too easy, because you want the world to seem vast. Mm-hmm. You want the world to seem big and mysterious, and have places to explore rather than just say, okay, I teleport there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one stumbling block you want to be careful of.
Yeah, if the characters can travel wherever they want, the world all of a sudden becomes small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, actually I have a good answer for this. I just gave the provokers an item that is it's a ring with multiple stones on it, and you can take one of these stones off of the ring and leave it somewhere. And then later on, when you put the ring on, you can decide to go instantly to one of these stones. So I wanted a method for my characters to be able to fast travel, but I wanted them to have to go to that location first, like manually. Like, okay, we have to hoof it to this place, but once we get there, we can leave one of these teleportation stones, and then later on, when we need to get back there, we can just put the ring on him. We're there. Mm-hmm. So they make the initial trek, but then there's fast travel there, essentially. So items like that, where it's like, yes, it allows you to teleport, it allows you to fast travel, but it's also not cutting out the whole exploration aspect and making the world seem big. So,
yeah. Well, it's so limited too. Yeah. What are there, 3 stones in the ring?
Yeah, 3 stones. Yeah.
So, we're not even sure if it works yet, but 3 stones in the ring.
I haven't tested it yet.
I don't want to talk about it. But that's just an excellent way of giving us the ability to move around quickly without spoiling the world or being attacked by dragons every time we fast travel, like Skyrim.
Yeah.
Okay. Worst ever. All right. So the next question is by the same person, so I'm actually going to skip it. Sorry about it, Rabbit. Just so we can give everybody a shot. Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, do you prefer, this is from PhD&D, do you prefer settings with multiple types of geographical terrain, like the setting has a desert, mountains, hills, plains, forests, jungles, tundras, etc., or do you prefer a setting with only 2 to 3 different types of terrain? So do you prefer a lot of terrains, or do you prefer Endor?
I definitely like a lot of variety myself, again, because it often reflects it has a real world feel to it, so and you can have some areas, like I have a mountain range that has all these little hidden valleys, so there's all these various little microclimates, and you can play around with those too. Like one of them is warmed by these hot springs, so the microclimate within there, even though it's in the far north, is almost subtropical, because it's warmed by these springs, and so you have this one valley that's like a microclimate. So you can actually, basing it off of real world situations, actually kind of make something that is, you can get a lot of variety. I like to have the variety in the terrain myself.
See, really quick. That's what I get stuck on, because I'm kind of a perfectionist and I feel like I'm breaking immersion. So my question is, and this is kind of simple, like, where do you put hot springs? Like, is there a place where hot springs can't be? Like, how diverse should it be without being unrealistic? I can draw the continents on a piece of paper. I can draw them nicely. I can draw islands. But when it comes to placing down the climate, that's when I just honestly, after I go for about 15 minutes, sometimes I just give up. So what do you do?
Yeah, I have that. I have issues with that too, where like I'll draw my map out and I have it. I have the topography, but I'm not sure where like everything goes. So I fall into this pattern of looking about where I live, and I'm like, okay, well, north of me, it's really cold. South of me, it's kind of hot. So I think I'm going to make this continent kind of like that, where in the north, it's pretty cold, and in the south, it's pretty hot. And then below that, below that, meridian or whatever, you have the same sort of pattern. But I don't know. I've always struggled with that, and I have a tendency to, when I'm creating a campaign setting, focus on one sort of climate. Like I'm working on a campaign setting right now, kind of off to the side, called Estia, which is sort of Mediterranean. I wanted to create an ancient Greek style campaign setting that also had typical D&D races in it. So Egyptian elves and Spartan dwarves and stuff like that. So obviously there, it's a very like the climate is very warm, it's very dry, very mild sort of winters and autumns. But as soon as I start moving out from that, I just get lost. So I don't know, Alex, do you have advice?
Well, again, this is kind of where Google is your friend, and like I said, even kids' encyclopedias, science encyclopedias, because they're a real basic outline, which is really all you need. Like if you look where all the hot springs are, the hot springs that I can think of off the top of my head, you've got Yellowstone, which is basically sitting on top of a big, supervolcano.
Right.
You've got them in like Iceland, which is a volcanic island, right along a continental, divide between two continents. So anywhere where there's volcanic activity, you can expect, or even if it's dormant, you can expect to find these hot springs. So, if you look around the whole Pacific Rim, it's basically a ring of fire, they call it, which is that's where all these, active volcanoes are around this huge area. So. That's where learning just simple basic plate tectonics, you can kind of figure, okay, they're likely to be around this area if they're going to be here, But you can also have, these magma bubbles that can form that, so like under Yellowstone. So things like hot springs are pretty easy to put in somewhere,
Sometimes I wish there was some sort of like just tool, and maybe there is, but that I could just utilize and be like, oh, if it's 30 degrees south, there you put a desert. Okay, the desert should be this area. It should go and like just do it for me, but simultaneously read my mind.
Yeah.
This is the 21st century. Why don't we have this crap?
At the same time, though, like I have to remind myself that like this planet that this world is on, it's not necessarily Earth, it's not that its tilt is not necessarily the same. Right. Its orbit is not necessarily the same. So seasons might act differently. The climate might be different. It might not be super cold up here and super warm down there. So, and I think as long as you're consistent, like we were saying, your players don't really question it, and it's not like they're going to be like, "Hey, why is there a desert here?" It's like, well, there is. Yeah. It's hot, okay? Like it's on the other side of the mountains, and it's hot.
Frickin' hot.
Well,
yeah.
I just want to plug a book that I really really like. It's not one of mine, but I got it from DriveThruRPG. I'll share it on the screen here. It's called A Magical Society: Ecology and Culture, and this thing is absolutely brilliant.
Make your screen big.
Just kind of skipping through here. Here.
Yes.
Like here it talks about the the seasons and how
that is awesome.
How you can change that.
TLDR, dude. I have ADHD. Like there's a lot of words right there.
Right here, they have things on mountain building and why they build. So
cool.
if you want a lot of this stuff in one place, this book is just great. It talks here about mapping your world so it makes sense where to put mountains.
And this is not just. I don't want to review any products, but really quick, I think it's important to let people know that's on DriveThruRPG. And what is
DriveThruRPG? Yeah, and I didn't intend to necessarily review it, but definitely get it. If you're building worlds,
what is it called so people can get it?
Oh, it's called. I just lost it. I just closed it. Magical Society, Ecology and Culture.
Yes,
that's awesome. I'm picking that up after this panel.
I own it. So
and I mean, they get into it. They get into a magical ecology, so they kind of make make suppositions about how ecological systems would develop differently with magic involved. So it's absolutely brilliant. So.
I own it, so I'm going to read it after this panel. So I've owned it for maybe 7 months. Maybe I should read it.
My library on drive-thru is just so full. So
yeah, I know there are not enough bookshelves in the world.
I know.
We're going to jump to a question. I'm going to get to Rice Swanson's question in a little bit, but first there's a question that it kind of plays off. The first question is, what are some interesting things that you can do with the astrology of a world, such as extra moons or well-known fantastical constellations? Yeah. Who wants to pick up this first? Who wants to chew that Oreo?
Well, a really good example of this is Kryn, the world of Dragonlance.
Yeah,
where you have a moon for each alignment, and you also have constellations for each god. And so the gods and the whole idea of alignments and magic and how that all works is it's present in the sky. So I like Kryn, more than any other like established campaign setting that I know of, plays on that idea of moons and celestial bodies being representative of other things within the world. You know, being able to look up and see the red moon and know that that affects your magic, you know, and stuff like that. And I love, there's that moment in the first Dragonlance book where they look up and they see that one of the constellations is gone, and they know that means that there's a god walking on the planet. Like, that is so awesome, and that's a really cool idea that you can kind of play with. I love throwing extra moons and stuff into my campaign settings because it's one of the easiest ways to tell people that they're on an alien world, where it's like, well, the blue moon and the green moon are now rising, you know, and it's like, oh shit, there's two moons? What? I've done things before where there was a moon that was not a perfect sphere, but actually like a shard of Earth that was floating around this world, and the players knew that there was this sort of shattered moon up in the sky, and that shattered moon became another campaign setting because there were people living on it. And so doing things like that, throwing weird constellation, weird celestial bodies and extra moons, and even other planets into the heavens above your players is one of the like easiest ways that you can do that, and tell them this is a fantasy world because there's 19 moons in the sky, yo.
One of my favorite fictional settings was the solar system in Pitch Black, where you know it had you know several suns, and you know you had this large gas giant, and then you know for a certain amount of time every so many years the planet was in total darkness. You know, which was just awesome. I love the idea behind that.
Yeah.
And I always imagined it as, because in the movie they show this kind of little mechanical view of the system, but in the center they don't actually have something. So I always kind of imagined they were kind of orbited around a black hole. You know, so. But that's something else too. Can you imagine having a world not in orbit around a sun, but in orbit around a black hole? If you haven't seen. What was the recent movie?
Interstellar.
Interstellar. If you haven't seen Interstellar yet.
No spoilers. No spoilers. I want to see.
No spoilers. But they have some amazing imagery of a black hole, so it's well worth just for that alone. But
that's what I was thinking of when you mentioned a system orbiting around a black hole. That's immediately what I thought of.
Yeah, because it you know it still provides light, but it's a really unique feature to have in the sky. You know this feature and they deal with time dilation, so you could actually have the time on one side of the world different than on the other, perhaps. You know, that sort of thing. Which would be even really stranger to work with.
How do you do that, though? How do you do that while maintaining the fantasy setting? How do you do that without crossing the line into science fiction? I mean, the wood elf archer is not necessarily going to look up and be like, "Ooh, that's a black hole. Let me tell you a little bit about string theory." No, he's going to look up and see the celestial body. How do you? Yeah, he might. Yeah.
Well, I would say that, you know, science fiction is where you are explaining fantastical elements with science, and fantasy is where you are explaining fantastical elements with magic. And they can blur. You know, you can have those things kind of coincide. I always put a little science fiction in my fantasy. I think it tastes real good when you sprinkle a little sci-fi in there. But I would say, you know, your example of a wood elf looking up and seeing what we know as a black hole, maybe they call it I don't know, maybe they think that is heaven, or maybe they think it's hell, or maybe it's a portal or a gate. You know, maybe they call it the Great Black Gate, and, you know, and it appears in the sky at night and they can see it, and maybe they worship it, maybe they fear it. You know, you can use things. The players, meta-wise, they know what it is. Oh, that's a black hole. But their characters and the people on this world don't know what it is. You know, they have their theories and they have their beliefs, but I guess it's like, you know, if we were orbiting a black hole and you go back in time to medieval Europe, they're not looking up and going, well, that's a black hole, you know, and it's
right.
You know, they're looking up and they're saying, you know, that is this. That's what I think it is, and I think
they would have a name for it, and that's what it would be, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. That's a great point. Great points all around. Before I get to the next question, I've completely lost track of which question has come first in the Q&A. So be sure to go through the questions, and if you like a question, give it the +1, and then we'll get to it faster. So
yeah, it'll move up to the top. Right?
Yeah, check it out. So the next one actually it says right here, springboarding off of the astrology comment. How do you guys view planar world building? And I'm just going to jump into George Lucas right here, baby. Hoth. Make it an ice planet. Make it a fire planet. Make it a jungle planet. Because I am lazy. Okay. So, and it makes sense. And it's not, for me. It takes a lot of time to build a world. Obviously, it's so much time where it doesn't really stop. The world is continuously building. You don't want to do that 50 times. So I would say try to come up with one or two ideas that define the plane that you're building, and base every decision you make, every response to whatever the characters do on that plane off of your one or two things. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. Now, I assume this is talking about building an entire plane of existence.
Yeah, I think so. Planar world.
Okay. Yeah. Or well, it could be that, or how the planes relate to your world. But
well, let's talk about both.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of lazy in that too, and then I basically kind of keep a very similar planar mythology in my D&D game to the D&D standard for the most part, but. Like in my core world, I have the mythology that the world is held up by 8 pillars, and that these 8 pillars are each under the domain of a different deity, and you have and they oppose each other. So you have life on one side, death on the other, law, chaos, light, darkness. You know, time and space. You know, they all oppose each other. So so I kind of took the typical D&D plane of mythology and just kind of modified it, and that's something people can do too. Is you know, don't feel like you have to come up with it from scratch. If you find a world that you just really like, you know, steal it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're gonna publish, so you just steal it, baby.
Already produced campaign settings, Wikipedia, the news, your drive to work. If something inspires you, don't throw it away just because it's not somebody else's. You are a creative individual. Like, you can come up with your stuff too. Don't count yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I use this. I use the D&D planes of existence, but I also am aware of the fact that between these planes, there are infinite other planes, and there are infinite other dimensions and infinite other universes. You know, I like the idea that there are these planes that mirror our world, like the Shadowfell and the Feywild, and then there are planes that are completely separate from it, like you have the celestial and the infernal planes and the elemental planes. And I also like the idea that there are planes of existence that are sort of running on alternate timelines, you know, where you have all of these. I like the idea of infinite universes where there's all these divergent sort of streams of, and I like the idea that the other planes are sort of immune to this. So Celestia is all on its own, and there are people. It's able to access all of these different timelines and all of these different sort of alternate worlds and stuff. And so, for me, like the planar stuff, I always try to keep things simple as much as I can in world building. The planar stuff is where I really just go crazy with it. I'm just like, it's infinite. It's an infinite universe. There are infinite planes. There's a plane of mud. There's a plane of ash. There's a plane of fire. You know, and just go crazy with it, because there's no reason why the infinite universe can't be incomprehensible to your players. Like, the world should make a little bit of sense, but the outer planes should not. So
absolutely. That's where you can just go all in, have a blast.
Yeah, exactly. If you got nutso ideas, that's where they go.
Take them to the planes, yeah.
Yeah.
Have all
Take it
the
outside,
rivers
buddy.
go up.
Take it outside.
Yeah. Yeah, take it outside.
Yes. Where all the jungles are in the middle of the deserts and all the rivers flow upward.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I mean, yeah, the sky is frozen and the ground is, I mean, everything's upside down and just crazy shit like that. Put it on another plane. Put it on another world. You know.
Yep.
Also, something that's interesting that I've considered doing is, some planes are not completely crazy fantastical. Some planes are modern.
Yeah.
Put them in a modern plane and experiment with how your fantastical creatures interact with an iPad. I'm serious. I mean, it's really funny and it's actually intense. And when they take that back with them to the original world, that's a fun plot hook to go through.
Yeah. Well, and I've had one of my favorite extra planar things ever was my players ended up getting stuck on a planet, an orc planet, just orcs, nothing else. Just
best planet.
a dozen, like 100 different tribes of orcs all fighting each other, and as soon as something else comes onto the planet, it's like that's what the orcs want. So the players are trying to get the hell off this planet, and there's orcs just everywhere, just teeming with orcs.
It's like humans, man. Always trying to fight each other, and then they're like, "Hey guys, there's something else out there.
Something else.
Get
Let's
him. Hey, look, something different. Get him.
All right, so make sure you're hitting the +1s on the questions. We're going to go to the next one on the top. Do you believe that you can effectively build bottom up? I love this. Example, start with a town, then fill in the world radially based off the direction the campaign takes or player input, or do you need that big picture first?
Believe it? I've done it, pal.
Do it, Alex. Hit them up.
Well, that's actually my world. I started it, decades ago, and it wasn't entirely from ground up. I made a basic outline of the world. Real simple, very very basic. Nothing, no major details. Yeah, I put the outlines,
like
mountain ranges, some basics, and then I started them, and then I created this small area around this town where they started, and so these humble players just kind of began to extend themselves out from there, and ever since then I've been adding to it. And the really cool thing is that every campaign you run in the world, keeps things in it. It keeps adding to it. So a good example of that is there were these players who were in that desert I mentioned before, where magic just doesn't work very well. The only exception is shadow magic. But of course you're in this stark desert of white alkali, and there's no shadows at all to use to shadow walk out of there. So they ended up fighting some of these soldiers, and they built this little cave out of their corpses.
This just got really dark.
It did. So, but it created enough shadow so they could shadow walk out of this desert. And so a couple campaigns later,
you got to break a few eggs.
A party found themselves in this desert, and they're marching their way across it, and they come upon these mummified figures all in this weird, cave-like shape that have been lashed together with ropes and just, blowing in the wind, the bits of rags and stuff like that, and they have no idea how it got there. But of course I do, because
direct your questions to the last party that came through here.
Exactly. Like, what kind of place is this? Who is this?
Did you keep that information to yourself, or after the game you?
Oh yeah. That's just for me. Unless they do some kind of investigation. But yeah, no, I like to have those little things.
Cool.
Yeah. On the idea of the building from the bottom up, honestly, that is the only way I world build. Like Alex said, that's pretty much exactly what I do. I come up with a location or two. I decide what the names of the locations around it are. I'll usually put a couple dungeons in there. I decide who the people are in this place, and I decide roughly what the terrain is going to be. And maybe I have a rough outline of the map. But as the players branch off from there, I start putting things in front of them. I start putting things behind them. Slowly the world sort of grows around them, and I like this because DMs and GMs, they don't. A lot of people think that they're God, but you should let your players help you discover stuff in the world you are building. Ask your players where their characters are from, where their characters want to go, and then put that stuff in your world. You know, if the players say, "Well, I'm from this small farming village where we raise this like fantastical kind of like mount," all of a sudden you have, okay, I'm going to put that right here. I'm going to put this town right here. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to talk to this player about what they think the town should be like. And then it becomes a collaborative thing. And I don't think enough people do this where they have their players help them world build. It's not like your players are going to be like, oh, spoiler alert, I know where that town is and what it's going to be like. It's like, you know, no, they can still have fun with it, and they'll actually have, I think, more fun with it because they say, hey, that's where I'm from. This is where my character's from. I'm going to know people here, or I know something about this city. I can kind of lead us here. So I mean, my players most of the time are going to be more creative than I am, or they're going to think of things that I haven't thought of. So I always ask them for input and ask them to help me discover my world. So yeah, I definitely built bottom up like 80% of the time.
Yeah, you don't have to give yourself so much work to do. Honestly.
Yeah,
and you know,
it is. Yeah, oh yeah, building a whole world from scratch is a lot of work.
It is.
Sometimes, you know, what I'll do sometimes with my game is, you know, one example is, you know, the ship wrecked and they're escaping the shipwreck and they find their way to an island, and then I ask the players, okay, what do you see? And they at first they're like, wait, what? You tell us what we see. And I'm like, no, you tell me what you see, and then let's go. And they did, and you know, it was a little awkward at first, but they really got the feel for it, and we've done it a few times since, and I think they love it, and I definitely love it because I can take advantage of improvisation and just really run with it. It doesn't have to be so ham-fisted. You don't have to say, okay, what do you see, and then you write it down, but a good collaboration and a good realization that there is no barrier. You know, there might be a DM screen between you and the players, but there's no narrative barrier between you and your players.
Yeah, you're not telling a story to your players. You're all telling a story together, and there's no reason why that can't extend to the creation of the world and the development of that world.
Absolutely.
Well, as a GM, you know, I want to be surprised too. You know, I don't want to know everything. I want to be surprised. I mean, the players will always surprise you, but it's even more so when you give them a collaborative hand in it. Whether it's creating backgrounds, whether it's creating fictional places, like, oh, I met this guy in this city. You know, and it's like, okay, now the city exists. You know, so so you can, it surprises me. So I like that.
And eventually, a plot hook will arise from something that you created and something that a player created, mingling, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't have to do anything. That was amazing.
I've had that happen where players mention something about something about his background, just offhand. He was talking around a fire or something, and he says, "Yeah, I once double crossed this crime boss. I forget what it was, and then he sees me nodding. He's like, oh crap, because he knows I just picked that up.
Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Well, I mean, a lot of people have trouble with the middle part of a campaign. They know how to start out strong, but eventually a lot of campaigns fizzle out. And I feel like if you have a good group of players and you're actively asking them to help you with hooks and with building the world, like campaigns sort of go on autopilot at a certain point where you're like, I know where we're going because the players are telling me they want to go there and they're telling me what they want to do. So that's where, like, it does kind of just sort of cruise control, you know? You as a DM feel comfortable with the players and with the group, and you know where they're going.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so next question. We got about 12 minutes. Let's keep rolling.
Yeah.
The next one is I built an ancient / current war / political turmoil. Example, tax hike by royals owing shadowy influence or head of ruling guild council assassination. Wow. All right. That's one intense campaign setting. What other world events and history do you find works to bring world to life? I think to bring your world to life. I think this is kind of saying like, I'm assuming that what this person means is, what do you pull from reality and place into your games and maybe give it a twist? So what do you pull and how do you twist it to make it yours? Or do you?
That's a good question. Well, I'm a big fan of having sort of vague past historical events that have happened. If you think about what we know about history, there are things that happened less than 1,000 years ago that we have no idea what occurred or how it happened because no one was writing shit down. So I'm a big fan of having wars that no one really knows what happened or who was fighting, and these empires that have risen and fallen. You know, I like worlds that are lived in, if that makes sense. I like having lots of ruins, lots of past civilizations.
I'm a huge fan of ruins.
Yeah, no, ruins are awesome. I mean, if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies or read the books, there's ruins all over the place, and no one really knows. You know, they have sort of an inkling because the elves have been there, but like a common person walking past, like the Tower of Amen, like, wow, that's big. I wonder what that was. You know, it's
a good example is Weathertop.
Yeah, Weathertop, exactly. Yeah. I mean, having some sort of hints at what the world has been in the past is always really cool. So I definitely I try to incorporate lots of ruins, lots of past wars and empires, and creatures that used to be there but aren't anymore, and things like that. So I mean, it's just like our planet. You know, there's ruins, there's extinct species, there's wars that happened millennia ago that we have no idea what occurred.
Mm-hmm. And take that and add in that the fact that your world is 3 times older than ours in most fantasy settings. Right. Oh yeah, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that because we tend to have a hard time thinking beyond a certain point as humans because our history is only about maybe 4,000 years old-ish, give or take, and there's a lot of gaps. But in a world that's where 4,000 years has been one age, and there's been a dozen ages, and you've had civilizations and civilizations, and there's just so much you can build on to create anything you want. And I don't normally take like specific events, real world events, certainly in large scale ones anyway, and turn them into part of my world. But I certainly think of them in when I create a culture. What have they been through? What are they going through now? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think to add on to that, I think we're all, our creativity and our imagination is a product of our environment. And I know I sort of grew. I was like 10, 11, 12 years old when we went to war in the Middle East, and so that has sort of really informed I grew up with that, and so my settings and my stories tend to involve a lot of war, a lot of martial conflict, just because that's where the conflict in the world comes for me. So like you were saying earlier, Barker, taking inspiration from all of that, all of the stuff around you, and your upbringing and your environment and your perspective, using that and putting elements of that into your campaign can really sort of give it a real world sort of gritty feel to it.
For sure. One little final note, whether they're real or not, and I don't want to turn this into a weird political sort of thing, but conspiracy theories. Look them up. I mean, throw those into your world. Even if they're so bizarre, the more bizarre the better. Make them real in your plane of existence, and I think your characters should like them.
No, that's really good advice. I've used big sort of like you were saying, where it's like the history on these worlds is even longer. It's like these conspiracies can be going for tens of thousands of years. Like I had a campaign setting where the players found out that the planet they live on is a prison for this god that is living inside the planet, and the players were just like, there's a god chained up inside the world, and it's like, yeah, you're living on a prison, like that's all this planet is. I mean, you can have theories like that, and I think it adds a lot to your world for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So jump into the next one. We got about 6 minutes. When a campaign ends, do you open up a new unexplored region of the same world you created? This is by John Poland. Or do you start over with a new world? Personally, I take this opportunity because I usually start small, but with a big picture. So I usually kind of do both bottom up and top down at the same time. But I take that opportunity to jump to a completely different part of the world and map that out. Mm-hmm. The same way I mapped out the first part.
I definitely stick with my current world, but yeah, I may start off in a different region, and maybe they hear stories of this other region where that just took place. I starting a world from scratch is hard, and the beauty of having a well lived in world is that it's so much easier as a GM. You don't have to come up with new. You just know it. You don't have to think or flip through pages to look for, oh, what is this going on here? You just know it because you've lived in it for so long. And in a pinch, if you really want to shake things up, you can have some sort of global disaster. Have a meteor hit the earth, up to the planet, or some kind of magical disaster. So you can always shake things up if you really want to. If you get tired of a setting and you want to just shake the hell out of it, go for it.
Yeah.
I just saw this question. We have about 5 minutes, and I kind of want to get this last question because I feel like it'd be a great way to wrap this up. This is from Rice Swanson. He asks, could each of you, in a round-robin sort of style, think of a concept and then incorporate it into incorporate it to form an idea for a world? I like that idea to wrap it up. Just give you something to take away with. Okay. Something kind of like Matt, you did in the campaign crafting. We want more episodes. The campaign crafting.
Sorry.
You actually talk about having pillars of a world, and I feel like that might be what he's referencing. That these individual aspects or high concepts of this plane. So you go first. Give us a high concept. Let's make a world right now in 4 minutes.
Okay, so so my pillar or my concept would be a large desert, and there's a city of glass because there is a civilization of people that specialize in sculpting and heating the sand and creating glass, and they have learned how to harden it and weaponize it and use it in armor. And create lots of different sort of objects and pieces of art from it. And I don't know what race these people would be, but they have sort of mastered the art of manipulating sand and creating these wondrous glass objects. Maybe the sand is not typical sand. Maybe it's sand of an ancient magical mineral or something. I don't know, but that's my idea: is glassmiths out in the desert.
Awesome.
Okay, so. Oh boy. I guess I'll go to the sky for mine. I'm going to say that that this is a ring world. It has a ring around it like Saturn. So it's got this this heavy ring around it, which when the world's sun kind of shines on it, it casts a different kind of light at night. And the seasons are not only counted by the turn of the planet, but also the kind of oscillation of this ring as it moves back and forth across the sky, and maybe even focusing through it is why this one region remains a desert, because the light is almost constantly on it, and doesn't give the water the chance to remain on the surface for very long. It's always being bombarded by heat.
Awesome.
Love it.
I like the so I like the idea of elementals. I like the idea that these people have used heat to turn sand into glass, but glass can melt under superheat. I like the idea of flame elementals, and what the civilization doesn't know is that there is an imminent invasion of this flame elemental, this fire. Then the Fire Nation attacks. Sorry, and to create a very tangible, very real reason for these people to be in danger. I think that I kind of stole that from you, Matt, and one of your campaign pillars was invasion. Mm-hmm. What a great way to take a world that's stagnant, normal, maybe even boring, and just make it exciting and fun and holy crap. Like, now you got to persuade all these people to join together and fight off these invaders. I mean, there are hundreds of plot hooks that come about, and that's where we're going to close. Is you are the master of your own craft, whether or not you think you are. this is, so many people believe that there's some sort of secret that you can grab, like, oh man, if only, like I said earlier, if only I had this map application that would make my map for me and read my mind at the same time. You are an artist and you don't even know it, all of you. Trust your own brain and keep track of the things that you think of, because use those small intricacies about the world that sometimes we stamp out and push away because we're too busy working or typing into a computer or answering phones at a call center. Take those and write them down, because those are real. Those are you. You're not the call center, okay? You're not the person answering phones. You are the journal. You are these words that you have written down. So with that, I'm gonna have everybody just go ahead and say one final thought. Mine is thank you everybody for tuning in. Happy BrigadeCon, and donate to Child's Play. BrigadeCon.org. You guys rock. Thank you so much for joining us. Matt.
Yeah, I'll just say this has been a great panel, guys, and I'll just say to anyone watching who's wanting to build a world and make it real for their players, to just don't make it harder than it has to be. Don't give yourself too much work. Draw upon every resource available to you, including your players. So yeah, thanks for having me on. This has been great, guys.
Thanks, Sean Connors.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And I guess if I had to say something, just think outside the box. Don't you're not stuck with the the standard setting. Just go crazy with it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You are only inhibited by the rules that you create. So take that, run with it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy BrigadeCon, and we'll see you at the next panel. Bye.